again, Primos.
So today we are obviously missing one of our Primas Hermanas. She had previous engagements. But also this is going to be a little bit of a special episode. It might run a little long, maybe not. We're going to see. But we're going to talk today about our history with something that has come up a few times in the past episodes. And we feel like it's just important. You know, whoever watches this. But we feel like it's important because it's going to come up a lot in our future episodes. Because in our past episodes, sometimes we reference it. We either say, you've heard us say cult, you've heard us say church. So today we're going to kind of explain
Religious background.
Yeah, our religious background. We're going to kind of explain, because I feel like for me personally, why I still reference it a lot is because it does affect, right? Like where I'm at right now in my life as far as certain, accomplishments, certain social things, right? Like even my history with dating and all those things, how a lot of experiences for me are a little bit new right now. And when we mention that on the episodes, people probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So we have to explain that. We're going to both kind of talk about our stories a little bit. But basically, this is talking about our experience with the World Mission Society Church of God. So it is a church, and it's based out of South Korea, but they are also based, one of their main locations is out here on the East Coast. And that's obviously the branch that we joined, that we
were a part of.
We got recruited through it. And I think this episode is also not only to talk about our story, but to bring awareness. We want to bring a bit of awareness. Well, how we're going to refer to the rest of this episode, we're probably going to just say church for legal reasons. We can only say things like it's a church that a lot of people, right, ex-members and also a lot of experts, people who study about this place, they say it has a lot of cult-like tendencies. So it's a cult-like establishments, right? They show a lot of signs of being a cult. So, you know, from here on out, we'll probably just refer to it as the church. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you make the judgment for yourself based off what we know. At the bottom of this video, we're going to link some other resources, some other things to just educate yourself about this group, because you might get approached by them. If you're in Jersey or New York, you will hear about this place. They are very, very high in their level of recruitment.
You probably already have heard about them.
Yeah.
Or they've probably approached you in the past.
If you go to the Garden State Mall, Willowbrook Mall, any fucking mall in New Jersey, you will hear about them. Like they usually go up to you and say, hey, we're having Bible studies in the area. Or, hey, have you ever heard about God the Mother? That's the biggest thing. So
have you ever heard about the Passover? Are you protected by the
seal of God?
Yeah.
So seal of God, Passover, God the Mother, Second Coming Christ. Those are all key words you want to look for when you hear about this group. But a lot of people, especially in the Jersey area, have had some kind of experience with this, or have a family member that had experience with this. I personally was there for 11 years of my life, so almost my entire young adult life.
I was there for about 4.5 years, a little over 4 years.
Yeah. So it was still pretty impactful. So we want to just talk about that. First, we're going to say how we came across this group. Why do people consider it a cult? It has, like I said, again, has cult-like tendencies. That's pretty much it. We're just going to talk about from the very beginning, like how did we hear about this place? How did they approach us? What was our time like while we were there? And things like that. So if you want to go first, you kind of experienced them. I think we both experienced them like around the same time, but we weren't necessarily telling each other about it.
Yeah. I feel like it pretty much was around the same timing. As far as I can remember, the first time being approached by them, because I probably had been approached by them before, just not really conscious of it. But the first time that stood out, it was a few days before Christmas in 2010. I went shopping with one of my sisters, and it was really like the last hour of the store. So like between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. We were walking into the store, and these two women were walking out. Their demeanor was a little desperate, like kind of sad and down, right? I guess like they didn't meet their goal, or they weren't successful on their little mission.
In hindsight.
Yeah. So, like it was just me and my sister, and we were chatting, walking into the store, and the one woman, I want to say aggressively, but in reality, they call it like their fervor. So she was just like, would you like to know more about the female image of God, God the Mother? So at the time I was like, yeah, sure, but only if you could show me through the Bible. For me, hearing God the Mother, it definitely intrigued me a little bit because one, I'm a feminist. And two, if you can show me anything through the Bible, I feel like, can we really argue it, right? So she did show me a couple verses. where it said, we are all made in the image of God, male and female. And then somewhere else towards the end, she shows me how Heavenly Mother Jerusalem, she shows me the proof through the Bible and then invites me to come immediately to this Bible study. So again, it's
same day.
Same, right? Like right now, like
at that time they used to be like, come now. And it's
right now,
10 p.m.,
like
11 p.m.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, well, my sister was already like rejecting them at the very beginning. And I was more of like, oh, whatever. Like, I'll, what are you selling? Pretty much that's how I felt. So yeah, so I was like, no, thank you. I'm with my sister and we're about to go shopping. She insisted just a little bit like, oh, just come, you can come right now. It's okay. Whatever. We'll take you, if your sister wants to say shopping. And I'm just like,
that's crazy.
No. Yeah, no. And then they were like, well, can we take your contact info? So gave them my number. I didn't think about it anymore. We went about our Christmas shopping and kept going. With them having my number, they did reach out to me for what felt like forever. Kind of like every few weeks, I would get a text message inviting me to come for a study, or, hey, we're having a barbecue. Would you like to come? Or we're having an event. And it just so happened that every time they messaged me, I was truly unavailable. My dad had just recently, his cancer was like progressing at that point. So he was sicker. It just happened that every time they texted me, he was in the hospital. And I was pretty much, if I wasn't at work or at school or with my kid, I was in the hospital with my dad. So I wasn't going to give my spare time to them. Mm-hmm. At one point, I did explain it to them because I did want them to stop messaging me, because
I wanted to let them know why you're unavailable.
Yeah, like I didn't want it to seem like excuses. But at one point, I was just like, listen, I'm going through a lot with my family. My dad's in the hospital and my kid is sick. And, I just need to take care of my family right now. And I remember her saying something like, well, we could be a community for you. We can pray for your family. Like, this would be the perfect time to come. And I didn't like that answer, like, why can't you just say, oh, we'll pray for you. And, when it gets better, then we'll see you. I felt like that would have been more of a
compassionate.
Yeah, like more of a compassionate. Yeah. And it wasn't, I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
So
in hindsight, now we know their main goal is to get you to come to their church.
Immediately.
Really what they care
when
about.
you're interested, right? Because I showed interest.
They don't want to lose their grip on you, really. That's what it is.
So I showed interest within that first second of us talking. But I do remember at some point in 2011, my brother invited me to an event at his church. Well, it wasn't just me, and it wasn't to me directly. It was actually to my mom and one of my older sisters. And I just happened to be free that day, and I was with them, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. We ended up going to the church. It was weird because the service already had started. So when we arrived to the destination, the doors were locked and we couldn't get in.
Oh, it was a service day.
We went and I was calling my brother like crazy, like, where are you? Like, open the door. Like, we're here. Are we at the right place? We didn't know. My brother wasn't there anyway, for some reason. But his wife was, and she came outside with someone else that we don't know. So they came outside to come get us. And they had these little clear cloths in their hands. And they're like, here, put this on. So we're like, we opened it. We're like, I don't know what this is. And she's like, it's a veil for your head. Because when we keep service, we cover our heads. It's in the Bible and we'll show you later. So we were like, okay. Because for my mom, she recognized it as like an older
Catholics wear veils.
Yeah, Catholic tradition.
Catholics
so
wear veils
for her,
sometimes.
She didn't find it that strange, but strange that they're doing it and that it was like kind of like mandatory, right?
Yeah. So because in Catholic,
before you enter
it's like a choice.
Yeah. Whatever, we went in. First thing you notice, obviously, men on one side, women on the other side. They made room for us. We sat down. They were sharing their Bible and their new songbooks with us. We're in the sanctuary. I can't remember exactly what the sermon was, but I was engaged. Like, I was listening and I understood everything he said, even though he had a very heavy accent. Yeah, he was Korean, so he has a very heavy accent. But I understood everything he said. And then it was time for the prayer. They broke out into, felt like another tongue, but now I know it was, Korean prayer. I didn't hear at all in Jesus' name or anything like that. But I did notice there was a name that was said throughout this prayer. The service ends. For us in a normal church, you come for service and you leave, right? But not here. Here, they all line up very nicely. They're walking out of the sanctuary. Everybody breaks into groups. Now we walk towards the fellowship. And so again, it's split between men on one side of the room, women on the other side. And they were looking for a teacher to take us into a Bible study and to explain what was just happening. My mom was just like, yeah, no, it's fine. We just have to leave. We have things to do, you know, like my mom was very like, I'm trying to get the F out of here, like now.
They'll try their best to keep you there.
And my sister too, she's just like, oh, well, you know, I have 2 kids at home and I have to go home. Like, you know, I only got a sitter for a short amount of time. So, you know, we really got to go. And I'm just like, I want to know more. Like, what the fuck was all of that? Yeah. Like, I wanted to stay, but I also didn't drive myself there. So I left with everyone, even though my brother's wife was like, oh, if you want to stay, I'll take you. But I was just like, yeah, no, it's okay. Like, next time. So I guess because of that, they knew I was interested. And so my brother kept inviting us more. Before we ended up leaving, which is the point of this, I noticed the 2 women that had stopped me and my sister. I was like, I know her. You know, like, I know her.
This is the same place. They reached out to me before.
So I was like, okay, well, I guess it's not that bad if my brother and my sister-in-law come here, right? If my family come here, then it can't be that bad.
That's a big part of it for later. That's a big part of why, right? The continuation of like faith in this place happened is because we had a familiar face there.
Right. So then I ended up reaching out to them because she did look at me like, oh, I know her from somewhere, but not exactly, like she didn't remember me exactly. Yeah. And today I understand why, because she's probably preached to, you know, like stopped so many people. She's probably stopped hundreds of people because she's someone that had been in that church for over 20 years. And at that point, she was already there for almost 10 years or probably even longer. Long story short, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I actually went to your church today and it was nice.
So crazy.
Yeah, I was like, it was nice.
Same thing happened to me.
But at that point, when I reached out to her, now she was in the Passaic office church. So she just happened to be in Ridgewood that day.
Oh my God, that's so crazy.
She just happened to be in Ridgewood. And I think it was because of the special day, whatever it was. She was happy that at least somebody, you know, like at least I came to the place.
They're just happy that you come.
Yeah. She was still like inviting me, but also like, oh, well,
just go with them.
Go with them if you feel comfortable with them, you know, as long as I went. I remember the ride home. My mom and my sister were in shock, kind of like scared. What the fuck just happened? And my mom just kept saying,
for some people it's weird. Like,
yeah, my mom just kept saying how like she didn't understand pastor at all. She didn't know what that was, and she kept referring to the Korean prayer, the prayer of our wishes. What it's called. She thought it was like they were speaking in tongues because she didn't understand that we were in a Christian non-denominational church.
Yeah, because some Pentecostal church, which you guys had experience with,
also do that. Yeah, well, they do that, but for her, it was like she related it to talking in tongues and kind of like within Catholicism or something.
Yeah.
So she didn't know what that was. She was like, did we just go into like an exorcism or something? And then my sister...
It's a shocking experience. That's why usually they don't, unless it's family, they don't normally, even to this day, they don't just invite you to a service.
I learned years later, once I was already a member, we weren't supposed to be there, obviously. Yeah. My brother was still pretty new. Yeah, he was still new, which they consider a baby in the church. And he was just learning all these things, and he was so excited, and he knew that it was a special event and thought that he could invite his mother, who he loves, and his sisters, right? Yeah. Because they're teaching you in the beginning salvation, right? Yeah. Like they're like entrusting you with this big task of like saving the world. And naturally, you have a close family and you're going to start off with saving your family, right? Yeah. Like the people that you love. That's what he kept doing. He insisted and he kept texting us, trying to invite us, and pretty much at some point was trying to like force us to come to this church to receive salvation.
What's the word? I guess you said fervent is what they like to say, but I don't know what kind of word we would use that's more relatable.
It's got to a point where it was like very desperate, and he was just like anxious and like
from the outside you don't understand the desperation of like, why do you want me to come to your church so bad?
And it was because like he was, I understand now after being a member and being that involved as well, where it was just like the only people that are going to survive the end of the world is
if
the
you're in this
children of
church,
God that are in this true church, right? Like that's what they claim. So I understand why he was
desperate
so,
about it.
yeah, like why he was so strong
And
about
if that
it.
was 2010 or
Yeah,
2011?
the 2010, when I went was 2011.
Yeah, so that's something that, just to bring this up, because again, my purpose of doing this episode is to bring awareness, because what this church tends to do, which is what makes them have those, again, cult-like tendencies, they love gaslighting and they love erasing history. That's why the Church of God that we talk
Don't
about
judge me.
today might be so different from the Church of God you will encounter today. So if they're getting preached to around 2011, we got baptized, which we're going to talk about in a second, in 2012. This church used to talk about 2012 being the end.
Oh, yeah.
And members who joined the church long before 2012, they have clear memories about the church teaching that 2012 would be the end. But once 2012 started coming nearer and nearer to the end, by the time we joined at the end of 2012. So they would kind of talk about it, but they weren't like straight up saying the world is going to end. But it's like we felt it. Like we could feel that energy of like, oh, shit is about to go down. We just made it at the cusp. You know what I mean?
I remember us having the conversation of like, okay, before we came here, we were like doomsday preppers. We were about to be doomsday
preppers. But then everybody was talking about the end.
Yeah, and I was like, the one thing we didn't plan for was like spiritual salvation. Yeah. We were ready with the cases of water, the cans, the lighting, the flashlights and batteries. Like I already had my own stock. Yeah,
we felt something regarding 2012. We felt like, damn, like some shit's going on. Like, at the time, a lot of people were talking about 2012 being the end, not just other religions and other teachings. Also, the Mayan calendar was going on at that time.
The fact that Hurricane Sandy happened that year too.
Yeah, that was after baptism though.
Yeah, right after.
Yeah.
Literally.
But yeah, like things were just happening. And so the church, why I bring this up is because, so at that time, there was even more desperation, because they're like, we have to bring everybody before 2012 ends, because this is it. Like after 2012, the world is going to end and we have to save our family, save our friends. So I feel like the desperation at that time was probably even more increased. Why I mention that now is because nowadays the church likes to deny that they ever said 2012 was the end. And we weren't here for that time, but if you dig a little more into this church and their history, there have been plenty other times in the past that they have claimed that the end of the world would come. And so now, I would say now they don't say a specific time frame for the end, and they like to deny this as well, but they are very much a time eschatology type of church. I think that's the word, time eschatology. We can look that up later. I'll put a caption with the actual wording. But they are time-based, where they do proclaim that there is an end of the world, which a lot of Christians do, right? A lot of religions do have prophecies about the end, but they feel like it's in our lifetime, right? But now the thing is, time is running, and I think some of the older members are starting to realize maybe this isn't true, Right. But they'll take any little thing for right now, what's going on, right? World War III feels like it's at the
around the corner.
They like to use things like the progression of natural disasters, the progression of social things that are happening, Trump being the president, so many things that are like big news, catchy things in the news. Right? They're like, oh, that's a sign. Yeah, the Pope dying. They probably had a field day with that. Like, oh my God, the Pope died, and he happened to die.
when he happened to die on Easter. Yeah, Easter Sunday.
He happened to die on Easter, which for them was their resurrection day. I was just imagining they're having a field day right now, because one thing they believe is that the Catholic Church is the
Babylon.
They think the Catholic Church, if anybody is religious, there's a Babylon the Great, prophesied in the Bible, that is supposed to be the Antichrist. They believe that the Pope and that the Catholic Church is the Antichrist, like the owner of the 666 in the Bible.
Wasn't this Pope chosen when we were in the church too?
No, Pope Francis. Yeah. Pope Francis.
Not the one today, but the one before. Yeah,
Pope Francis happened when
we started.
The Pope got replaced while we were in the church, and we were like, oh my gosh, it's a sign or something. Like, everything was a fucking sign, bro. Everything was a sign. But anyways, I just had to mention that because till this day they like to deny, but they are very much a time limited church. They do feel like everything is a sign of the end. They believe that Christ is going to come again and end the world, obviously. A lot of Christians are waiting for that, but we'll get into detail later of why they think of it differently. Because what we didn't mention two things that separate this church. Well, there's a lot of things that separate this church, and some of the stuff you already spoke about. But just to give you a clue and some key points so you can recognize who these people are. They don't hide the fact that they believe in God the Mother. That's definitely one clear way to recognize them. They'll say, oh, have you ever heard about the female image of God, or God the Mother, or God is not just Father, God is Father and Mother. Come study about this. Come for a Bible study, come for a barbecue. Like, they're always having events, especially if you're in the Jersey, New York City area. Another thing is they do worship on Saturdays. So you might hear us say Sabbath day. They worship on Saturday. That's one thing that makes them different. And all of these things, they'll show you verses in the Bible for everything. Everything we've ever believed in that place, everything we've ever practiced. Not everything. There are some things that don't, but those little things that they don't do and they don't show you a verse for, you kind of overlook it because you're like, well, everything else is in the Bible.
Was right, yeah.
So whatever, you know. What else was it? The Feast of God, yeah. But Passover is a big key
baptism.
Word. You'll hear a lot. Baptism.
Like they want you to be baptized as soon as you're done with your first Bible study. And it's not even like, oh, would you like to be baptized? It's like, would you like to receive Passover? Yeah. And then, of course, you just learned. Yeah, you just learned that Passover is the way to salvation, right? One of the many ways.
Passover or death.
And then you can't receive Passover unless you are baptized in the new name of God, because they also believe in the second coming of Christ, who already came.
Exactly. That was one thing that I was going to say. That's another indicator, but you might not always hear this from them right away. It's something that they kind of hide from you a little bit.
They bring you in they bring you in with, hey, have you ever heard of the female image of God? Or straight up, have you ever heard of God the Mother? Did you know that the 7th day of the week when you're supposed to worship God is actually Saturday and not Sunday? And then they'll tell you about Passover, how you need to receive the Passover or celebrate the true feast of God, beginning with the Passover.
And the Passover is the flesh and blood of Christ. So
yes,
that's
it's
stuff
that
they have verses for. You know what I mean?
So
There's
it's like
things
everything that you have been aware of or have heard of in the past, but now it's going to be confirmation. So they bring you in that way because that's easy for you to be like, oh yeah, I knew about that, but I didn't know it was like that.
They don't give you the meaty stuff till later.
So then you come in for your first study and you learn about it. And if you're a faithful person, or if you're seeking God, or if you're seeking community, and then, you know, it's something that you want to learn more. Yeah. Like you literally want to learn more. Like we were there as soon as we got baptized, we were there every single Saturday for every single service.
The rest of our lives.
For the rest of our lives, like almost 7 days a week.
I've never missed a Sabbath day after that.
Like
so that's
almost 7 days a week.
Yeah, what makes them different from other churches? That's the thing. When you think of other churches, and you know, they try to say, well, it's in the Bible, so if you're complaining about this, you're just not a child of God or whatever.
Right, you have no faith.
But you know, other churches, you just go like, you know, you catch one service and then you leave. Like, oh, that was a really nice service. I received it. They're very legalistic, which they like to deny. But yeah, it's Sabbath day or death, meaning spiritual death. Like, and they'll show you the Bible study for it. They're like, yeah, in the old ages, in the Old Testament, you kept the Sabbath day or you were stoned to death. No one's going to stone you now, but, you know, your spirit is going to die. So we're like, oh, shit. Like, you know, so when we first came, we did only keep one service. But they're like, then they told us we have 3 services.
They told us there was 3 services.
And we're like, oh, that's great.
Oh, awesome. If I have plans in the night, I could just come in the morning.
Yeah, we thought that was great.
We could pick one out of the 3. Yeah. But no.
They were like, she was like, no, they're actually all different. And then I was kind of annoyed at that.
Yeah.
They said all 3 services were different. I was like, that's kind of annoying, because I was like, then if you miss one, I was like, if I can't come for the morning one, I'm gonna miss what was said in the morning or the afternoon. I was like, that's not fair.
I'm not gonna catch up. Yeah.
I thought they were having 3 services a day.
Yeah.
So that, you know, because Saturdays are hard. People are not used to having a Saturday service. So I'm thinking, you know, they're making it easier for people to come and be able to worship on Saturday, because it's the day that's in the Bible. Yeah. And some people work on Saturdays.
At the time, we worked retail, so of course the weekends, and so it wasn't that easy for us to just. And I thought,
you know, for everybody, they were making it easier for them to keep. But they're like, no, it's 3 different services. We actually have to keep all 3 services, because like that's how God is most pleased. So everything was like to please God. And so we're like, oh, damn, like we have to keep all 3 services. And we're like, what do you guys even do? You know, but they're literally there. So they have 3 services, morning, afternoon, and evening. And in between, some people do, but if you have like high faith, or if you're like really a faithful member of the church, it's encouraged you don't leave anywhere in between services unless you're going to go recruit people, like recruit more people. But other than that, in between services, you know, they serve you lunch, they serve you dinner. We're having just together what they call like fellowship time, but you're literally just together all the time, and you're there morning to evening. And then some people even stay there even after all the services are gone, you know? So yeah, it's a very interesting thing. So that's what makes it different.
So when you're new, like
the
how
worship
we were,
is mandatory.
Yeah.
It's mandatory, basically. It's not a choice.
For us in the beginning, right, when we would keep the Sabbath services, Saturday services, in between, we were having Bible studies. And then after they felt like we've already learned everything we needed to learn, then we were, then we were spending more time in the fellowship area learning to teach these studies. So regardless to what, the entire time you're basically just
immersed in their world. So just to go back a little bit, so I want to talk about how I encountered them. Similarly to Jams, I was approached by strangers at first. I used to work at Office Depot. So I was retail. I was like a kid. I was like 17, 16 when I was working there. My first time encountering them, I was 17 years old. And there was one lady who, you know, she didn't say anything about God the Mother. That's the funny thing. Once I joined the church, when they would kind of talk about God the Mother, I wasn't like really sold on it. And the way that they would show the Bible verses, I wasn't sold so much on God the Mother the way that I was with everything else that they taught. So to me, when I would look back and think how they always recruited me was only with Bible study. And I was like, oh, wow, it was like God knew that that's what I needed to hear in order to come, you know? Yeah. So they would always invite me with Bible study. And that was something that
specific topic.
Nothing,
like,
just and plus at
like
this
to come
time,
for a study?
What I learned later within the culture of the church was that God the Mother wasn't something they used to preach about openly all the time back then. It was very rare, actually. Yeah. So I'm surprised that they reached out that with you. By the time we joined, 2012 and after, then mostly you would hear about God the Mother like right away, like on the streets. But just because they tell you about God the Mother on the street, when you come to the church, that's not necessarily the first thing you study about, because they know that you might not be ready for that yet.
I didn't learn about her. I don't think till like our fourth or fifth study.
Yeah. But even that was back then.
But because they would reference Heavenly Mother during some sermons, during services. So you hear naturally we're like, what is that? Like, you know, but like I remember being preached to, but they do remind us that we are heavenly children. So in order to be children, you need your father and your mother, right? So Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother.
Sense to like our little minds. Also, just to mention, they do target people that don't have a lot of like religious background, like a lot of biblical background, because again, they do use the Bible for just about everything. But they do rely on the fact that you have no biblical knowledge. So, you know, they're just expecting you to believe everything. One thing they like to say, though, is, and which I liked about them at the time, was they would say, oh, if you have any questions, ask, because we have an answer for it. And for the most part,
they were very confident that they can prove
for the most part,
you.
they could show you. Like, I'd be like, oh, well, what about this? And then they'll show a verse. But I will say there were times where you have a really good, really deep question, and they're like, "Oh, we'll just study about it later." Yeah. Oh well, you know, God doesn't. That's like not relevant to our salvation, so you don't have to think about it.
That's a big study, the 7-hour studies, right?
In the very beginning, they'll make it seem like they have all the answers to your questions, but you can push them a little bit. If you push them a little bit, they will definitely
if they were concerned,
pushback if they don't know the answer, and then they'll probably bring in somebody else that can answer. But if something's really bothering you, or you feel like, oh, that didn't really answer my question,
they can't brush it off,
don't bury it, because that's what it happens. That's what they rely on, is you, because of like the social pressure, kind of like, you know, you feel a little weird when it's like, when somebody puts you down for your question or doesn't let you ask it or something like that, you know, just socially, you're just like, oh, it's okay. Maybe it's not a big deal. Or they know what they're talking about. That's what most people feel, because you feel like they're so well-versed. Most of what you'll realize after in hindsight, not everyone is well-versed. You think you are because you're so new, but at most, the people who study the Bible with you, they're just memorizing these verses that they've been taught their whole life. Like, you know,
because we are learning it.
Yeah, they ingrain it in you. So they really have just verse to verse. So they jump around a lot from verse to verse. And that's how they teach their studies. You're never just reading, let's read this chapter of the Bible today. No, it's like they'll jump to this verse and they call it, it's a lock and key. So it's like, this verse in the Old Testament will explain this verse in the New Testament when you put them together. So they don't like to admit this, but a lot of their verses are out of context. And they like to fight that, right? They have all types of countermeasures for us saying that they take verses out of context. But they do. If you keep reading, the shit they're trying to tell you does not make sense. And that's why they don't want you to keep reading. So if you get invited to a Bible study and they tell you stop reading here, keep fucking reading, and you'll see that it doesn't make sense for what they're trying to explain to you.
Because they tell you you're not supposed to read the Bible from page 1, sentence 1 to the last page, the last sentence.
Yep. They'll try to tell you that this is how God meant for the Bible to be read. God didn't mean for the Bible to be read beginning to end, because that's how Satan would deceive the people of God. So only the true God can give us the true interpretation of the Bible.
Right, like it was a treasure. Like
they had an answer for everything.
Yeah, like you had to find the match. Like what was it? Like the soulmate.
Every verse has its mate.
Yeah,
which is funny enough. In that verse, so they use any
because that's why
they'll use any translation of the Bible, any language. If you use NIV, NLT, these are just King different James. Versions of the Bible. King James Version, New Living Translation version. Mm-hmm. They'll use anyone, and we kind of used to use that as our ammo to be like, yeah, any version of the Bible says the same thing. Right. But there were certain verses that were not the same. Mm-hmm. And you can tell when they kind of don't reference those other versions of it, because specifically that verse where it says, no verse shall lack its mate or something like that, they use that verse to prove the fact that the verses just go together like that. But like I said, when you read that in Spanish, that verse is talking about animals. And they're talking about the animals that I think that Noah had to bring in to the ark at the time. So anyways, when you read that verse in the Spanish Bible, it doesn't make sense. And I remember being already a few years in when I read it in Spanish for the first time, and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe because like, it's like this little inkling of like, wait, what the heck? Like, that's not what that says at all.
Yeah. But remember,
at that point, I'm a few years in, so I'm like, oh, shit. You know? Like, I was like, I can't question this now. They're going to look at me like I'm a fucking
which is wrong, which you should have just been like, hey, I was wondering if I'm teaching my grandma, what verse do I need to go
like,
get
this
for,
verse doesn't make sense. How can I use this verse?
But
like, I don't know how they do it in Spanish countries.
Like I said, when she preached to me about God the Mother, she showed me, obviously, first, Genesis 1:26. In the image of God, male and female. But then she went through and showed me Galatians. Right. We wanted to dress up in our church attire, but then we realized that's maybe a little too traumatic, too triggering. So yeah. But then she jumped from the Old Testament, right, Genesis to Galatians, where she was showing me. Was it Galatians?
Yeah. Galatians 4:26.
4:26. Yeah, where she was
the new showing above. Is our mother. It's free, and she is our mother.
Yeah, so
which is another verse that's totally out of context.
But anyways, originally I didn't put 2 and 2 together because I figured, okay, it does make sense. You're showing me that God has 2 images, right? Male and female. What does that mean? There's a man and a woman. Look at the human beings on the earth, right? There's boys, there's girls. We're all made in the image of God. Blah, 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 right? But then, so who is the female image of God?
They would use the existence of mothers, period. Like human mothers, animal mothers, to a mother's love.
Mother's sacrifice, mother's love.
To enhance the fact that God as a female, as a mother exists. So that's why a lot of people kind of fall for it, Another thing, so one thing that makes them a little cult-like is the love bombing, which again is another thing that they deny. But when you come in the very beginning, when you're a new person there, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
All eyes are on you. You're coming in. You're feeling so much love. And I want to say this for the record, too. The people who are recruiting you, they're not necessarily bad people. Everyone is really there because they really believe this stuff. Yeah. So they're not bad, evil people. I would say the ones that know that this place is all bullshit would be the top leaders. And I'm talking like the pastors, maybe God the Mother herself, which we didn't mention. God the Mother is alive to this very day. So that's another thing. If you get preached to about God the Mother, just be like, oh yeah, I heard about this. They don't tell you that she's still alive in South Korea, because they know if you hear that right away. And that's the thing. I want to question them on this. I can't wait till I get preached to again. Like if they don't recognize me and they just trying to recruit me. But one thing I would say to them right away, I would bring up the fact that God the Mother is in the flesh, living in South Korea, because they deny
she is Christ in the flesh, living
they don't
in
tell
South
us that.
Korea
They don't
today.
tell us that right away.
Yeah.
Even to us, they didn't tell us that.
Not
right
even
away.
when we learned the God
when
the
they tell
Mother
you about God the Mother in the Bible.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring this up is because they're very like, oh, you can, they even use that verse in the Bible to say you cannot be ashamed of God, right? Because they also believe in second coming Christ, who is a Korean man who came to this earth already. And that's why we want to kind of explain the early parts of this church, because when you just tell someone, oh yeah, I went to the World Mission Society Church of God, they believed in God the Mother, and they believed in second coming Christ, who came a second time, and he's Korean, and he, you know, whatever, God in the flesh. So if you just tell someone off the bat, they'll just be like, oh, you're fucking crazy. Like, why did you ever believe that in the first place?
Right.
I could tell that's fake.
Yeah, I already knew.
Like, yes.
Just from when you open your mouth, I know.
And guess what?
Fake.
They probably know that shit too. So then what do? They don't feel, when you're a member, you don't feel like you're deceptively recruiting people. But the way that you were conditioned to recruit people, you are deceptively recruiting them. Because they know if I go up to you right away and say, hey, come to our church, we're going to teach you about second coming Christ, who came from South Korea and died in 1968. Like they know that
that's weird.
They know that you're going to be like,
pushback.
That's weird.
It's
like,
pushback,
oh, I'm not going to that church. So they don't do that. They might tell you, second coming Christ, come to our church and study. And then you come and you study about the basics. So that's what we want to get people to understand too, is that, oh, how did you believe in this church? How did you stay there for 11 years? They are so systematic and what's the word? They're very purposeful in the way that they know exactly what they're doing. Like their method is tried and true. They know that if you come, you study the basics, you get fear of God put into you.
There's levels,
You get fear of disobeying God's commandments put into you, and then they start teaching you all the crazy shit. Yeah, they wait until they're sure that you know without the Sabbath day you cannot live, right? Passover. They make sure that they attack all the other churches and other religions, so you that can't go anywhere else. There's nowhere else you can go.
Like you only have God in this church.
Yeah, this is the only church. And there's other churches that believe that they're the only ones. But why this church, their method is tried and true, like I said. They make sure to attack all the religions. So it's like, if you go to a church and they don't keep Saturday as a day of worship, that's the wrong church. Why? Because this verse says 7th day of the week is Saturday, right? So then if you go to any church, most churches celebrate Sunday. So you already feel like, damn, I can't go to that church because they celebrate Sunday. Right. No, then they attack other things. Yeah. They attack, the Passover. If they don't have the Passover, which is the flesh and blood of Christ, they're not the true church. Oh, but that church does do the bread and wine. Well, they don't keep it on the exact day that you're supposed to keep it. Like, they have an answer for everything. So one by one, they start making it feel like you have nowhere else to go.
Going back to like what you were saying, where somebody would be like, oh, but I could have told you that was a cult. I could have told you that was false, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but we're not dumb people.
Exactly. Right? People have this perception of
and it's like, no, I'm sorry. We sat there, we were engaged, we listened, we asked questions, but then not only did they show us with the Bible, they were also showing us through science. Like it was scientifically proven. They were showing us through what depends on the study.
At the time.
Yeah. And then they were showing us through history.
We never
fact didn't because they already had it there, you know?
It's like one of those things where it's like what do they call it? Like the smoke in front of your eyes or whatever. Like it's like magic tricks, and it's like, mirage, oh my God,
like a mirage.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it is in the Bible, and then it did happen in history.
Because like you were saying, like
they
Sabbath
show
day.
You things in history
with like the Sabbath day, right? Oh, God said in the Bible on the first day he did this, that. Seventh day he rested. Let's look at a calendar. Pull out a calendar.
Exactly.
When is the first day? They always make the first day Sunday, right? So 7th day is Saturday. Like, and it was kind of like things like that where you're just
little
like,
things.
Oh my God,
it catches you at the moment. But
the Lord's day is not Sunday.
I don't want to say that, like, just to, because then they'll take this video and be like, see, they're saying that our stuff is undeniable. No, their stuff is deniable. It's just the way that they set things up. Right, to show you the very believable things in the beginning. When
you're still vulnerable.
Once you're vulnerable, you've been loved bombed to death. Right. Like they love
you. You're getting all this attention for being a new member. Yeah. You're put in these new groups and all these people love you. For us girls, we're very mushy and whatever. Like, like we got to do a lot of like fellowship stuff. So it was like
they were very ingrained in the community.
Like they would make us cute little like trinkets and things like that. Like
cover
cute
your
little
Bible
booklets.
for you.
Yeah, like bookmarks and stuff like that. Like very personable.
Yeah, they do. They love you a lot. And
a lot
of these members do it.
Yeah,
they do it intentionally from their
right.
heart.
Like, just like how when we were there,
Yeah.
we were faithful members. We would have done this for the people that we also
Yeah,
brought.
because you genuinely
Because
have
we
this
did
faith, yeah.
believe at the time, like, you know.
But why we call it love bombing and why they deny that it's love bombing is because they'll try to say, well, no, we treat you like this all of the time, but that's not true. So, and members, I hope if a current member could watch this,
not
you
if
know
you've been
it's
there
not true. You were not treated the same
after
right?
a
That you
year.
were after a year, after even just a few
6
months. Once you studied everything, they're like,
6
okay,
months.
it's time for you to preach. And if you don't want to, if you know you're having trouble with something,
now
they're kind of already judging you. Like now you're like in this judging scope of like, are you a child of God or something? They're no more. They're not like coddling you and like showing you this like little love. Now it's kind of like, you know.
Oh, now it's your turn to go out and recruit. And if you're not recruiting, then something may be wrong with you.
Yeah.
Either you need more teachings, or you need to learn more, or maybe there's some doubt in you, and we need to correct that.
Yeah, and all of this that we're saying again,
you're not spiritually healthy.
All of this that we're saying to them right now, if they were to hear this, they're like, yeah, that's like nothing's wrong with that. That's in the Bible. Like, you know, like they don't feel like anything is wrong with that, which fine, whatever. That's your belief. But anyways, so the way that I came to the church was similar to that, where I was recruited at my job. I would just be at the register or at the copy center where I worked. And they would come up to me, and there was one girl specifically who came in, and she invited me with Bible study. And that was enough to get me to be like, oh, Bible study. Like, no one's ever offered to study the Bible with me. So that's kind of why it caught my eye. Because at that time, you know, so Jam's father was sick in 2012, and we lost him in 2012.
Well, he was sick all of 2011, passed away February 2012.
So in 2012, that was February. And I had lost another close family member around 2012, like a very big part of our family dynamic at that time. So we lost 2 people to cancer in 2012.
Back to back.
So obviously when you're surrounded by death, you know, you do start to think about the spiritual a little bit. And I always used to just be online thinking about stuff and looking up, right? Like I was kind of like a doomsday prepper in the sense that I felt like something's going on in the world. And then I would read comments on certain videos about like, you know, if there was some weird shit going on, I would be on like World Star and I would be reading the comments, and people would be like, you know, because like people are a little bit religious, right, in the world. So they'll be like, well, this is a sign that second coming Christ is going to come and everyone is going to see him when he comes. Like they would talk about second coming Christ coming when all these signs of the end were coming. So that's what I would see. And I'm like, yo, I don't even know what that means. I'm like, I don't know what second coming Christ means. I was like, if something's going to happen biblically, I was like, if this stuff is in the Bible, I need to know. Because I'm like, the world's going to end.
Right.
And I'm just over here the whole time I was preparing for the end of the world, like in a physical way, like you said. But I was like, oh, you're telling me that this stuff is happening because of the Bible? Like, I'm just reading stuff from like online, you know? So then, similar to me, I would be reached out to by this church at this place. It was one woman and then another woman on a separate occasion, but same job. She would come to me and she was like, oh, do you want to come to Bible study? But the first lady that reached out to me that way, I gave her my phone number, and I was 17 years old at the time. So I had no car. I was young. I'm very naive at that age, you know. I'm naive, but at the same time, I don't just trust anybody. So she would invite me, and at that time, they were very, very pushy. Definitely. I think they changed that a little bit after people started speaking out about them.
But it was also because they believed the world was going to end in 2012.
Yeah, exactly. Which,
so
seeing in
we need to
now,
save as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah, but that's why they were extremely pushy at that time. But they're a little pushy now too, because if they feel like they have a chance of bringing you, they will continue to reach out to you until you at least come for a Bible study. But at that time, like pre-2012 and even a little after, they were very pushy, like in awkward, just not good ways. But anyway, so she would text me all the time. Not only that, before that, she would mention, I used to work till like 10 p.m. at night. When I was 17 years old, no car. You know, I still felt pretty much like a young child, you know, even though I was 17, 16. And so she would offer, like, we can pick you up. Like, don't worry about it. We'll pick you up. We can drop you off. And I'm thinking in my head, even though I really wanted to come for the Bible study, but in my head, I was thinking, that's fucking crazy. Like, like I was like,
right now, when I get out of work, you don't even know me.
I would bring up, like, you know, valid, like, not an excuse, but a valid reason of why I can't come with you.
Right.
And I'm sitting there like, well, I get out at 10 p.m. Like, it's really late. Like, I get out of work at 10 p.m.
You're saying that, like, being
like,
genuinely,
genuinely
honest,
not trying to get out of it. Like, I was interested, but I was like, I get out at 10 p.m.
Just the
and
timing
she's like,
is not
no,
good.
that's okay. And I'm like, you know, even that made me feel like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Who the fuck is going to a church at 10 p.m. to study Bible? And I was like, there's no way. And in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way my mom's going to let me go in a ride with some random ass people to a church at 10 o'clock at night and come back God knows when, you know? So, and now in hindsight, knowing that the Bible studies are like an hour long.
Right.
So I would have been gone. I probably would not got home till like midnight being an underage person. Yeah. And that would have been
travel
crazy.
Time, so, yeah.
They would offer to pick you up. They would offer to drop you off. Like, by any means necessary, they want you to come to the church. If you have any kind of like reason why you can't come, they will try to find a solution for you.
Yep.
So anyways, that didn't throw me off completely, but I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm not getting in the car with you. So she would text me all the time. And at some point, I started, similar to you, I started to kind of feel guilty because I was like, damn, like, and I remember after when I joined, I remember all the times I used to ask my mom, I used to be like, Mom, this lady is inviting me to Bible studies and I really want to go.
Yeah.
Can we go? Because I just always wanted to study the Bible because being Catholic, you don't really grow, unless you went to like Catholic school, Sunday school. Even then, honestly, I can say that nobody studies the Bible the way that this church does. So I had that interest to like, I want to study the Bible. Like, I just want to know, you know? Yeah. And I would tell my mom and she's like, yeah, like later. Because, you know, I would want my mom to take me and drop me off. Because I would tell her, like, listen, this lady wants to pick me up, but I don't want to just jump in a car with strangers. Like, I just felt like I didn't want to do that. So she would always text me. And I would always, at some point, I stopped answering her because I felt so bad that I kept saying no. Because, you know, I think we're both just pretty empathetic people. Mm-hmm. So I just I felt bad continuing to say no all the time, but she was so persistent. And this was back in the day where I had like a BlackBerry, I think, or a flip phone. Oh. So she would send me paragraphs of shit, paragraphs of like, you know, this is happening in the world and like all of this is in the Bible. Like, she would send me paragraphs and I would read everything, but it would come in and like 1 of 4, 2 of 4, I remember. 3 of 4. Like, you know, back in the day, the messages would come like in fucking.
You only can have like 120 characters.
Yeah, but she would send me these pages of text, and I would sit there reading all of it. But so I felt bad.
That's how my brother would reach out to us. Like he would. That's where I would see the desperation in him. It didn't have to be that strong. Like there was no need for it to be that aggressive. And I think
they're realizing that now. I think
that's
now
why so many people had given the pushback, right? Like, for example, when it came...
That's when it feels culty. Yeah. It's like, why are you so desperate?
Yeah, so like my brother did the group texting. I would be the only one to respond. But then when he would come around, it started getting awkward. Because then obviously all he's ever talking about now is the church and how he needs you to come to a study and how he wants to save your life. With me, again, I was always down, but also I didn't want to go alone. And I also didn't want to just go with my brother.
So the girl would text me all the time. And like I said, I was reading it and I wanted to come, but I wasn't going to do no crazy shit like just jump in the car with you and go.
Strangers.
So, so I felt some kind of way about that. But we heard through another person that we know, which is my sister. She kind of spoke about how she was reached out to by this place. And she started talking about it like in a similar way. And then you were like, wait a minute, I heard of this place before. I think I've been there. And then I was like, wait a minute, I heard about this place before. Because that's the thing. If you're in the Jersey area, you have definitely been reached out to by these people.
Yeah.
They do target a certain look of people. So if you're just well put together, if you look nice, if you look presentable and you're out on the streets, at a store, at a mall,
if you're a happy
that's when they'll
person,
approach you. Yeah, if you're like just like if you just look approachable,
if you have a good aura, they're gonna approach you.
Yeah, they're gonna approach you, whether you say yes or no. But that's who they're targeting usually. They don't target if you look like a little ghetto, a little poor, tattoos everywhere. They might not, even though they still do approach some people. Like there's some members that they're still young enough to know that they don't discriminate. But once they're like a devout member, they do discriminate a little bit. But when you're new, like how we're thinking, save the world, save the homeless people, save everybody, because you're thinking this is the way to save everybody.
And mother-in-law.
Yeah, everybody. You don't have any. In the beginning, you really feel like we have to save everybody. But later on, you realize they do have like a baseline criteria for who they want to come. Yeah. Anyways, we're all talking together. And we all heard about this place in separate occasions. Like I told him I would get reached out to all the time, and how you got reached out to and all this stuff. She had went and got baptized. And when it was my sister, we're like, yo, she's talking about this church like it's an amazing place. Yeah, and she only been there like once, but she had this one experience with it. So we were like, oh my gosh, we have to go. Like we have to go. Like I think we all
now we know it's a real place.
And
it's
she
not,
knew where it was
because we also were concerned that like. It was too strange. So, like, are they really a church or not? Yeah. So now we know it's a real place because she was talking about how beautiful the place was too. So
yeah, she had actually went in person. So this was our first time because you at the time, I guess with your brother, you just didn't know that it was the same connection.
Although I saw the two women there, I didn't like put all the dots together. It was just like, oh, I remember they invited me. You know, that was it.
Yeah. So then she told us, and we're like, oh man. So she was pregnant at the time, and we're like, all right, when you have the baby, we're gonna go.
We made a pact. We made a pact.
Like, when the baby's born, we're gonna go.
Yeah.
And then what happened was maybe like a couple weeks later, you texted me, and you're like, hey, my brother invited me to that church for a Bible study. I'm gonna go. I remember you texting me. You were like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And are you going to come with me or not? Like, you were kind of like, I'm going to go if you're coming or not. But, you know, since we were talking about it,
since I knew you wanted to go, but you didn't want to go alone.
Yeah, you were like, it's that place that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So let's go. So
because
I was
then
like,
they were asking for the study, and that's what related to you. Like, they were inviting me for a Bible study. So I was just like, yeah, I confirmed. It definitely is. So let's go.
Yeah, you were like, it's the same place that we were talking about. So I was like, damn, we said we were going to wait for my sister, but I was like, fuck it, you know? I was like, this is happening. I was like, it's a sign.
We had an appointment, basically.
Yeah, we made an appointment, so I was like, there's no turning back now. So in hindsight, and this was a story that I would bring up while I was in the church a lot, because again, that's another thing, is so many things would happen that they're just fucking coincidences, but you're probably telling yourself, this is a sign that this is the true place, or like, this is a sign that God wants me to be here. So that's why you stay a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that same day that we went to go to the church, we didn't know what was going to happen that day. We were just going for a Bible study.
Yeah.
And we went together. I set the appointment. The appointment was like 12. So I had put my alarm clock at 8 a.m. because I was so excited. Literally like at 7:59. Because I remember, you know, when you're excited for like a field trip or something, you wake up early because you're excited. Yeah. So I was excited to finally go to this damn church and do a Bible study. So I was like looking at my alarm, waiting for the alarm to go off because it was just going to be like a minute. I was like, let me just wait for it to go off. At 7:59, my sister's mom texts me, your sister is going to the hospital. She's in labor. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, she's in labor. But I could have made two choices that day. I could have said, oh, I have to cancel on the Bible study and go be with my sister. Or I knew in my head, because I have experienced so many sisters being in labor at the time. So I was like, oh, labor, you know, she's just going to the hospital. I was like, that's going to be hours. I was like, he's not going to be born till like later probably. So we have time. So I was like, you know, I let you know. And I was like, let's still go. Let's just still go to the church. So we went, we did our first Bible study. And I don't know, you probably remember more than me, but I don't have much memory of that study. But I do know that it was about the Passover. It was one study they call Forgiveness of Sins, which tells you why we're here on this earth, how we're here, why are we born as human beings on this earth, and how we need to go back to heaven. Yeah. And that the only way to do that, the only way to go back to heaven is to participate in the Passover. And then they said, do you want to keep the Passover? And I remember just looking at you and I was like, you know, mind you, Jams, our relationship my entire life was like, me and Jams were always together for everything. But also she's like my older sister. And also kind of like, if my mom's not there, Jams is there. You know what I mean? She's like my second mom. So, and she's a little older than me. So at the time, you know, I just looked at her and I'm like, all right. Like, you know, I was like, you want to keep the Passover? Sure, I was like, yeah, why not? Like, we just studied about this and we're like, yeah, like, I want to keep the Passover. It sounds great. And then that's when they tell you, well, you have to get baptized.
Just to make the point too, we did make the appointment and we went for the study, but my brother was there with us. Yeah. Because my brother.
So this time the brother was the branch out into bringing us to this place. So we have this familiar face. Like, it's not just a random person off the street. Yep. Now we have a family member who's there. Yeah.
Like, my brother sat in the study with us.
Yeah. And the wife. And so we did the Bible study. I mean, they say, we want to keep the Passover. We looked at each other. We're like, yeah, let's keep the Passover. And they're like, well, this is what it means to keep the Passover. And that's when they tell you have to be baptized. And, you know, obviously we were baptized in Catholic Church. So we're like, oh, I'm already baptized, right? If you say that, I'm already baptized. They have an answer for that. They say that baptism didn't count.
One will, cancel that out.
Yeah, cancel that out. You have to be baptized in the new name of God, which actually I don't even think they told us that at the time. No. They just said, I don't know, but did you keep the Passover when you got baptized? You know, like, now they're a little bit more careful about everything they say, but back then it was so easy to just whatever. Like, it depends on how much you fight it, the baptism part. So we didn't fight too much. We were just like, oh, we're baptized already. But then they tell you, well, you didn't keep the Passover. And we're like, oh, you know, you're right. Yeah. So let's get baptized. So we got baptized that same day.
I don't remember the study. I do remember when they were putting our information in the book of life. He was asking us, like, are we single? Are we married? Whatever. I looked at my brother because at the time I was in a lesbian relationship, and I like looked at my brother and he was just like,
well, in hindsight,
that,
why you're saying that that's weird is because we don't know till later, but
yeah,
it's not a gay friendly church,
right?
Like it's a church that
so
using verses in the Bible, they say that homosexuality is bad. So she didn't know that at the time.
I wasn't sure.
Agreeing to be baptized in the church.
But that's why I kind of looked at him. That's why I remembered that he was in the room.
Yeah, and you're expecting him to tell you because you're like, he's
like,
letting her as a queer person agree to sign to this. But at that time, again, they're just desperate to make sure that you receive this salvation, this Passover. So he's not going to be like, he's not going to tell her at that moment they're not gay friendly.
Right.
He's like, yeah, just tell them you're single.
Yeah, like single. Like, kind of answered for me. And I was just like, oh.
So, so after that, that's it. Like, that was our first study. Got baptized that same day. My nephew was born that same day. Mm-hmm. So we took that as a sign. We're like, oh my God, we said we were going to come when the baby was born. But we got baptized the same day that he was born. So this is like a sign. Like, it was so stupid.
We went to the hospital right after, too, to tell her.
We went to the hospital right after.
She was like, yes.
And we ended up trying to bring her back when he was born. So that started everything off. This video obviously is going to be a little long. But like we said, we're just sharing for whoever wants to know. And, whatever's out there is out there. For people that are curious about this church or this, just our history with it. But one thing, another reason why it comes up in the podcast sometimes is when I say, I haven't really been around my family during this time. So I was there from the time, the dating experiences, which I already spoke about in the dating episode, right? What they believe about dating, what they believe about relationships. So I won't go into that again. But as far as my family and why I wasn't around, so in the beginning it was easier because I had you. So me and Jams were going at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it was a little easier to explain to our family because I'm not the only one. So again, their worship day is Saturday. We were then taught that we have to come for all 3 services. So it's not one of those things where it's like, okay, my family's having a party on Saturday. I'll go to church in the morning and then I can still go be with my family the rest of the day. No, we then quickly learned we were expected to be there for the whole Saturday. Yeah. Then like once you do more
no longer had a social life
on Saturdays.
Outside,
yeah, on Saturdays specifically, which is hard because obviously your family is gonna do all the shit, right? All the parties, especially if you're in a Latino family,
for years.
All your shit is gonna be on Saturdays, So I'm like, that's gonna be hard. And at least I think there was like one time maybe we went to a party in between services, and we went to
the baby shower.
Our sister's my sister's baby shower. There was like about 2 times that we went in between services.
Our first year too, again, we went in September and literally I was baptized before my son's birthday. So I had my son's birthday party already pre-planned.
That was the first time that we said, well, we can't do anything about this.
Yeah, the week after or the weekend after is my nephew's birthday and my sister's birthday. And then the holidays, which for forever we were celebrating our normal holidays. Yeah, now we're learning.
Christmas instigator.
Now we're learning that,
it's bad.
These are pagan holidays and we're not allowed or we shouldn't or why we shouldn't celebrate them. So now we are not able to celebrate with our family.
Our holidays, yeah. So the holidays, and so again,
that's where it gets pretty.
I think also for a lot of Americans and even Latinos, Christmas is not really religious. It's really just the time for family. Yeah. But they would really emphasize so much. Like we weren't the type of people that would celebrate Christmas like, let's go to church on December 25th. We weren't that kind of people.
Well, I did.
Christmas was just for
So I did go to plays. A church play every Christmas and every Easter. Those were the only 2 times a year that I would go as an adult because I would be invited by family or friends or whatever. So I did attend a service, but it wasn't like it wasn't church
like
goer.
Oh my gosh, Christmas is the birth of Jesus. I don't know. I didn't grow up with Christmas like that, especially being more Americanized.
But
Latinos. A lot of Latinos do celebrate it for the birth of Christ. So, it's a big family thing. And Christmas, Latinos celebrate mostly Christmas Eve. So they would say that was pagan and that it was against God. And they would show, some videos.
It's disrespectful to God.
And they would show us why we shouldn't be celebrating Christmas. So they don't celebrate Christmas and a lot of other major holidays. Like Halloween obviously is around the same time. So it's like, all right, we were big fucking Halloween people. Yeah. To this day, we're huge on Halloween. We're huge on Christmas and, just family time in general. So already these things, these parts of our identity, we were giving up,
losing,
because we felt like we were trying to please God at this time. So our family doesn't understand that, you know. They're like, you can't miss one Saturday, you can't miss one service, like, you know. But
this
they don't understand
nephew.
how
It's for your family.
So it did cause, I would say, some rifts in our family, but it was easier. I think it was easier that we had each other. So it's like, it wasn't just me leaving my family to not be there for a whole Saturday. It was both of us and her son. And her brother. So, you know, at least there was a little group of us
it wasn't weird. Yeah, it wasn't we had family in the church. Yeah, because it was my brother, his wife, and then the two kids, us. Like, we were our own little family, the three of us.
So it's like, oh, well, suddenly Jams and Tiff are not around.
Like, now it was expected. They knew that not to count on us.
It took a while, because for years still, they're like, y'all can't miss one Saturday. I'm like, no.
Well, they still say it to my brother. They still pressure. My brother and his wife are still members in the church. They obviously were there before us, because they're the ones that actually brought us there.
Yeah.
And even till this day, if my sisters have parties, they are still telling him, well, if you don't come, then that means you don't love us. And he'll still try to show up, but he always shows up after third service. Yep.
It took us a couple weeks for them to, like, you know, they try not to pressure you too much in the beginning, because they are scared of pushing you away. But little by little, they tell you what is the norm for them. So, you know, whereas we thought we could come for one service, they're like, no, you come for all three. Okay, maybe we could leave in between and come back. No, you can't. You're supposed to stay on the church grounds the whole entire fucking time. But anyways, so that was one thing, was the Saturdays. Yeah. But then it became, okay, also Tuesday nights. Then they tell you, well, we also have something called third day service, which is on Tuesday nights. And you can't miss that either. Yeah. Because that's life or death. So any service time felt like life or death. You cannot miss a service. If you miss a service, you have no faith. You're displeasing God. You're not being clean, because the Sabbath and the third day cleanse you to be able to come before God. So, yeah, so that was Saturdays and that was Tuesdays. And now, even to this day, there are some people that only keep those service days, but then you're considered a law keeper, which is almost like an insult. It's like, if you want to be considered faithful, you have to do everything that is in accordance with what the church teaches you to be. So then what they started to encourage later, as we grow in faith, like as you're getting older. So, there's that little love bomb stage in the beginning where you're just Bible study all the time to get you to believe in their basic foundation of studies. And then later they teach you the more heavy-hitting stuff. And then, you know, if you have questions, they'll answer for the most part. But if you have questions that they can't really answer, then that's when they start hitting you with you don't need that for your salvation.
Not right now.
You don't need that right now. Or that's not important. We'll learn that later. Why are you asking that? You know, are you having doubts? Like, that's when they start to kind of gaslight you a little bit and kind of make you feel guilty for even asking certain questions. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. So in the beginning, you do ask questions, you know, like what we were trying to make the point of before was when people try to say, how could you believe in that? That off the bat, you could tell that that's ridiculous, it's crazy. But it's like, no, they didn't introduce that. They didn't tell us right away.
They don't tell you everything on the first day
right away.
You know,
they'll wait until you're, like I said, believing enough that you feel like, holy shit, I can't go anywhere else. And then by that point, you're too involved, and you're like, no. Even if you're scared, like, you doubt certain things, but then you're like, damn. But if I leave, I don't have anywhere that has the Passover. I don't have anywhere that has a Sabbath day. Because at the end of the day, you have some kind of faith. Like, they brought this faith in you in the Bible, but they made it in such a way that you can only believe in their teachings, you know? So you're scared. Yeah. Even though they do some shit, even outside of the Bible, they'll do, like, weird culty things, and you feel like they're wrong, but you're like, oh, but all this other stuff made sense. So, like, this little bit of stuff that doesn't make sense, I'm just going to, like, not think about it. Like, you know, you kind of gaslight yourself, because that's what they like to do, is kind of just manipulate you in that way. So they have a lot of manipulation tactics, which they like to deny. But, you know, just if you encounter them, like, just be aware of these things, because they are everywhere. Like, even where Jams currently lives, after I had left, there was one, they opened the location maybe a few months later, right around the corner from her fucking house. And I was like, are you kidding me? So they're everywhere, you know. In Jersey, New York is really populated there.
Well, they've already preached to me twice.
Really?
At my job. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, and now I know who it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's crazy. They opened a location right next to her. They're all over the place, all over Jersey, all over New York. They're all over the world too. That's another thing. People think that, like, it's just this little place. No, they actually have a lot of locations. I would say every major city in the U.S. has a location, but they're also overseas. They have a lot in Korea. They have them in Peru. They have them in India.
Everywhere you can think of.
China even. Like, they're everywhere. Brazil. It's a worldwide thing. But anyways, why I like to say like all of this just to say it feels very believable in the beginning. So that's why we hope that if anybody comes across this video, it could help them a little bit. I would say ask your questions, but don't just take their answer. If you feel some kind of hesitation, and what I didn't get to finish saying before. So one thing that I would question about them now in hindsight, if somebody was to approach me and try to get me to join, or if they talk about God the Mother, because they're very big on this, oh, you should not have any shame to talk about God wherever you are. But then why don't you tell people about God the Mother being in the flesh right away? Yeah. They don't tell you that God the Mother is a Korean woman still alive. You know, they kind of hide that a little bit. They wait till you come to the church to tell you. Sometimes they have pictures of her everywhere. And what they used to tell us was, oh, she's just the founder of the church. You know, they don't say that's God the Mother. So, but the funny thing is, if you do question them about it now, they're afraid to not admit that she's God the Mother, because then they think they're denying her, right? So they're not supposed to deny the fact that that woman in the picture is God the Mother, because then it makes them feel some kind of way about their faith. So ask them, right? If they approach you about God the Mother, say, oh, is that the woman that's in South Korea still alive? And see if they say yes. And you're going to see how they fucking sweat, because they know they can't deny it. But they also know that if they admit to it, it's going to make you think twice about coming. Yeah. So that's why they don't talk about God the Mother in the flesh right away, because they know that people are going to be like, that shit's weird. Yeah. I'm not coming. Or even Second Coming Christ. Oh, Second Coming Christ came in the flesh as a Korean man. Show me him, or tell me about him. Mm-hmm. They'll have a little bit of like, ooh, like pushback, because they're not expecting that. You know what I mean?
Because you're not ready.
I'm not going to say they're embarrassed of it, because it's something they believe in. They believe.
You just throw off their process.
You throw them off their method.
Their agenda. Yeah.
Yep. You throw them off their method, because they know. Another thing they don't want you to do is go online. If you go online, literally just Google them. You just Google them and you'll see all the shit that people say. Yeah. Now, if you Google them, their website will come up, because I used to work for them, not even for money, just for free, like volunteer work for them in their tech department. So that's why my involvement with the church was a little bit deeper, which is crazy. I don't know if we're going to get into that today, because honestly, this video is so long. But I worked in their tech department. So I know everything about how it works with like their countermeasures, with how hard they work to get their websites to be pushed out there. So the reason they work so hard, they have so many websites, so many videos now, because they want that when you Google their name, right? If you Google World Mission Society Church of God, or God the Mother, or God the Mother cult, they made this whole system in such a way so that the first like 3 pages is all of their websites and their stuff, because they don't want you to find their opposers, right? They don't want you to find their, what do they call, critics, right? Critics of the Church of God. If people like this are speaking out against them, they call them slanderers, which I didn't learn until after. Was to slander means you're literally lying about something. But guess what? What we're doing is not lying. We're telling the truth. And we're telling you our experience. We're telling you our experience. All of this is based on our experience, right? We're not going to say, oh, they're a cult. But guess what? They do cult-like things. They have manipulative tactics like a cult. You make the decision for yourself, you know what I mean? But we're just letting people know what the real life thing is there. Again, the Saturdays were something that were taken from us. Right now we have to give our entire Saturdays, our Tuesday evenings. But then they start to say, well, you have to preach, right? If you want to please God, you have to preach. You have to bring people to this truth. And their preaching days are pretty much every day. Yeah. Sunday, all day. Sunday, whenever you're not all day working, was for preaching, unless they had an event. And the event's purpose was to bring people to the church.
So it's still a form of preaching.
It's still a form of preaching. You have to bring people. You have to invite people to come to this event. You know, if you're having a barbecue, it's not like, it wasn't like churches where you're just having a barbecue just to enjoy it. It's like, if you didn't bring someone to this barbecue, you would feel guilty to even sit there eating the food if you didn't bring somebody. Because it's not like other churches where it's like, wow, you're really enjoying
You're so down on yourself because you didn't contribute a soul to this event.
So you and they make you feel like you can't just come here and sit here. Like, why are you sitting here just having a good time?
You need to do something. Yeah.
So it wasn't like, other churches, they have family days and like, right, a barbecue day where everyone's just having a good time together. But it's like, if not a single new person comes to this event that we had, where everybody put their money into it and we're cooking all this food, if a new person didn't come, it was like, it was all a waste. Yeah. So they make you feel like this guilt. You're never just having a good time just to have a good time. you had to bring like
I
a
remember
new person.
Super Bowl events.
Yeah, if they had a Super Bowl event, the point is to bring someone to get baptized. If they're having a fucking soup day, like, you know, like they have all these like fun little events nowadays. Yeah. A bake, I don't know, like a bake off or some stupid shit like that.
The bazaar.
Like,
remember we used to
do they used to do that. They don't do that anymore. But performances.
It was just for like the community too.
Yeah.
So
another thing
whoever comes off the street too at the point.
Another organization they work under is the We Love You organization, which that's like a whole other foundation beast of its own. But now through that foundation, they do a lot of volunteer services. They used to do volunteer services under their church name. Now they don't do that anymore because they're trying to get more recognition for God the Mother herself. And she's the founder, right, the chairwoman of the We Love You Foundation organization. So the reason why I bring that up is because they do a lot of volunteer services. And in the beginning, you're like, yeah, we do volunteer services. And you're so excited about it. But then later I learned,
like I mentioned,
all this shit is just for show. Yeah, all that stuff is just for show. They put a camera in people's face and say, hey, can you say something about our chairwoman? It's like, wow, thanks to the chairwoman, you guys came out here and helped us. And it's like, you know, the members that are there doing it for good intentions, but the leaders are like, well, this event was a waste of time if the VIPs didn't come. Yeah. This event was a waste of time if a politician wasn't invited. If we didn't get news coverage, like on the news, this event was a waste of time. So you're not really doing things just for the beautiful volunteerism of it. It's all for a purpose. It's to get recognition. It's to veer themselves away from being called a cult because they're doing all these great things, but at the end of the day, it's just for show. And the crazier part is that nowadays they don't do volunteer service under the Church of God anymore. They really just do it either under a SES, which is their college department, and then they do it through something, you know, through We Love You, which the funny thing about We Love You is that they try to separate Church of God from We Love You, where it's like, oh, this is not church related. This is nothing to do with the church. It's like, okay, who's your founder? Are you guys, how did you guys all join this? Ask them, how did you guys join this foundation? Yeah. They're all church members. Like all these people joined through the church. Well,
for my beginning, right, when I was there, I remember during Hurricane Sandy when we did the cleanup, we had the shirts that were for the Church of God, but they did have the We Love You symbol too. Like,
oh, well, back then. So back then it was very new. They were very they didn't know how to separate the two. Right. That's why it's this whole thing. But anyways, you know, they do a lot of fake volunteerism. Like, again, like
obviously the members are really out there putting in the work. Yeah. Like we're out there doing it genuinely. But again, like she said, behind closed doors in those offices, when they're calling the headquarters, like the big dogs,
they're approving these events,
right? Then they're over there talking about, well, what was the point? Look at how much money you guys wasted, and how many people got baptized from that event.
Yeah, like, you didn't have any baptisms? Like,
no studies.
What was the point of this?
Yeah, like the statistics, when it started becoming
very
numbers.
Like that's what started to bother me a lot about them, was when I started to realize, holy shit, like that's, not in this for
that's where
the true love of God, you know?
That's kind of where I started falling out.
Yeah,
when I
I want to talk about a little bit, just so we can wrap up the video, because like I said, we have so much to say about this place, but we didn't want to
it's okay.
overwhelm everything, but we wanted to just say as much as we could, again, for awareness. Yeah. And number two, to just, bring up this once and for all, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of backstory. So that when we do reference it, at least you have an idea. Yeah. But if people do have questions or if anything interests you, let us know in the comments, because then we could do another episode where we focus on just one single part of it. Or maybe even do like a little separate video or answer your questions, because we do want to bring as much awareness as we can. Because I would say at the end of the day, join whatever the hell you want. But if you had a choice of joining this place and not joining this place, I would say do not.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
they're different now than they were back then. But I would say don't do it. They're
honestly,
very manipulative.
I was in for over 4 years, and I've been out for like 8 years, maybe even longer. But till this day, I still have
religious trauma.
Yeah, like I still go through stuff because of, like my experience in the church and, things that happened and how it affected my self-esteem and, just a lot of stuff. So honestly, like, even though I left, I still can't live a normal life because, I'm constantly reminded of stuff like that. Yeah. Like I said,
and our family doesn't always understand. Yeah. They're like, move on, whatever, leave it in the past. I'm like, well, yes, but
it's hard.
There's certain traumas
it
that
still
we got
me
from this
today.
place. Yeah, there's lots, and I spent 11 years of my life. That was my entire young adult life. Like I spent a lot of my time there, so it's not something
I brought my son with me when he was 6 years old, and he spent a pretty good amount of time of his childhood there. and I had to pull him out of sports, you know. And how did that affect him? He gained a lot of weight. He also lost his self-esteem as well. Like, he used to be such a friendly, outgoing person, and just because we were there all the time, you know, he wasn't as social when we left. Like, you know, it was hard for both of us to adjust back into the world.
Yeah.
And till this day, we're both going through this, you know?
Yeah, that's another thing they have that gives them a cult-like tendency, is that they're very us versus them. So that's the thing. If you want to just look up, oh, what are signs of a cult? What are some ways that you can identify a cult? They'll list all these things, and then you'll start to see how Church of God, again, right? We can't just say they're a cult, but you can see how they fit all of the descriptive
they
things.
Hit all,
they
check
all the points, which is like, oh, what do they say? If it looks like a duck, if it sounds like a duck, then it's a duck. Like, you know, so just make your own judgment like that. But go ahead, ask your chat GPT. Everybody uses chat GPT nowadays. It's like, hey, chat, what are the signs of a cult? Like, you know, and you'll start to see all these different things. But us versus them mentality is one thing that they have, where you isolate yourself, because it's like, if people are like, this is you in this little group of people, it's like, these are the true children of God. These are the people that are going to heaven. These are your brothers and sisters. This is your heavenly family. If someone is outside of this, you preach to them, they come to this heavenly family, they're your brother and sister, they're your heavenly family. But if someone comes and they don't believe in what you believe, if you preach to them and they reject it, or they persecute you, which means, right, they give you a hard time about your faith, they attack you about your faith, they talk shit about your faith, you know, they say,
make fun of you.
They say, oh, you're in a cult. Right. They say that's not the true church. That's a lie. Don't believe in that stuff. Anybody who gives you any opposition for your beliefs in this church, they're the outsider. So now you only have this community. And like, once you're in that community, you have to kind of conform, because you can't be with the people outside, because the people outside don't live the way that you're supposed to live according to God. Yeah. And then you have to be with them, but then you have to do everything that they do in this little community, because if you're not, then you're going to be black sheeped within this little community already. So you can't be a black sheep when you're already a black sheep over here. You have to, you have to conform to everything that they do here, because you want to fit in. And you know, people hear this and say, see, they're just being fake. Or it's like, no, we were trying to live our life how you told us to live, because we thought we were doing what was right. We wanted to be part of God's family. And you told us to be this certain way because we had to. So, you know, like I mentioned in my past video about the dating, their views on dating. You know, we conformed to that because we felt like that's what you had to do. There's some people that don't conform to it, and they go on and marry whoever they want. But guess what? They're looked at as the black sheep within that community, because within that community, you're not living your life the way that they said you should. So it's not to say that everyone follows it. There are some people that deviate from that, but they either hide it so that they're still part of the little community, or they don't hide it and they get black sheeped within that community. You know what I mean? So nobody wants to feel like the black sheep. You know, you want to try to do the best that you can. So like you said, you either hide it or you're fine with being the black sheep, and then you feel awkward because they're in there kind of like silently judging you. Honestly, they treat you differently.
I think that's what happened to me when I tried to leave the first time, because then
you become sick. You're like a sick member.
Yeah.
And then is already showing signs of not being so faithful.
And then I definitely felt the shift in how they treated me then. I always felt like I was being watched. And, you know, like it for me, being a person that I don't like being center of attention and things like that, like it didn't sit well with me. It didn't make me feel good. And I thought that the best decision was to like leave the church. Again, they have so many locations, right? Like, you think that you could just move from one location to the next without an issue, and
everything has to be approved too.
Right, everything, it's like so controlled.
Oh yeah, like, you can't even just visit another church if you wanted to. So okay, so you weren't really expected to. My level of involvement with them was what they would call a gospel worker, and so I did give a lot of my time and dedication to them because I felt like that was what was right. So I lived with members at some point, because they kind of, I lived with my mom for the most part of my time there. But then at some point they made me feel like, oh, well, if you live with members, you know, this will make you grow more. This will show your faith and your dedication more to God. You won't have any distractions. So even though my house was like literally 15 minutes from the main location I was going to at the time, I moved to like a house with a bunch of girls that was just 10 minutes from the church. But now I'm living the lifestyle where I'm fully ingrained with them. So already, even when I was living with my mom, I barely saw my family. I would go from at the time I was in school, I would go from work, sometimes go to school because I ended up being a part-time student. Because that's another thing. In the beginning, they made you feel guilty about being like a student. So I almost gave up on school, but my mom didn't kind of let me. So I was kind of like, fine, I'll do it. But I limited myself a lot, and I changed to part-time.
Well, besides, we mentioned earlier, like their recruiting sites is shopping malls, but they're also in universities. Yeah. Like they look for teenagers,
because you're impressionable
18,
at that
20,
age.
like they're looking for young adults because of that. Like
nowadays, and the problem is nowadays, so if they preach to you in schools, they're not really encouraging you to leave school anymore now. That's the problem, is that they've changed a lot because of backlash. So now they'll try to say, we never told you can't go to school. We never told you can't do this. But they did. Back then, if you were in school, they would like make you feel to the sense that like that's a waste of time. The world is going to end. You have to dedicate your full time to the gospel.
I remember hearing testimonies from certain members that were
they
like,
would hype it up.
I was in college for this, and I left that to become a full-time gospel worker. And I'm so much happier.
Right.
The one sister,
they would glorify it
the one sister that almost had a music deal too, where she gave that up to, to give God, give glory to God and sing in the church choir. And it was like, it's a beautiful story, but then look at you now.
Yeah.
Like,
so many people gave up. So many people gave up a lot of stuff. It's just so
sad. Like, if they're still there, it's so sad.
Yeah, but they don't realize, they think they really did it for like something good. So that's what they changed now. If you come and you do have a record deal, maybe, I don't know about record deal, that's a little crazy. No, but they'll probably still be like, be careful with that.
Right.
But if you're already like a high status person, or if you're like in school, they'll encourage you to stay in school, because at the end of the day, they don't want the backlash saying that we convinced you to leave school. But also they do feel like, they want to use your position within the school to reach more people. So now they've changed their tactic a little bit. So back then, yes, they used to encourage people not to join school. I was kind of at that cusp where they would tell you, but still kind of like insinuate, but let you make your own decision,
letting you know that you need to be here
all the time, and
like
really
any
hard.
Free time. The only place you could go to was work, because that's where you're making money. That's
in order to tithe.
Well, they would tell you, because this is how you earn your living, right? You need to pay your rent, you need to pay your bills, but in reality,
any free time of yours had to be at the church. So I would go from work. Sometimes I had school, and then I would go straight there. Like, you would eat dinner there every day. They had dinner there, because you would go preaching. You would go preaching first, and then have dinner like at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like, so they would
during
take turns cooking. Yeah, during the week. That was what, Mondays, Tuesdays they wouldn't, because we had service. So Mondays,
Wednesday,
Thursday, Friday.
Well,
Friday was preparation day.
Monday and
Friday was cleaning day. You went to clean the church, so you
Mondays
didn't
and Fridays were preparation day.
So, for the most part. But some Mondays you could go preaching and stuff. And then, so then Sundays was an all-day situation where you would be out preaching all day. From like 10 a.m. you meet up, you have like a little gathering, and then you go preach either to the malls or far. Like, you would take Sundays to go to farther away locations, to go just preach and recruit people all day, and then come back, have dinner, maybe like a movie night or something, and then go back home. But every night you would be there late, and if you went preaching, stores closed at 9, 10 p.m. You come back, you eat, and then you stay there and you study the Bible. Like, they made you feel like all of your time had to be dedicated to like studying the Bible,
to the Word of God.
Word of God. Study, not just studying the Bible. You would study the Bible, but you would study specifically their studies that you would then teach other people. So you're basically just memorizing these verses and the connections to them. And you would spend a lot of your time just practicing that over and over again. So now in hindsight, you could tell why they have this tactic. It's because when you're this much overworked, this much just always ingrained in their teachings and their beliefs, you have no time to think for yourself. This is like the easiest way for you to just be manipulated into believing that this is the only thing that there is, because you don't have time to do your own research either. And they don't encourage your own research. That's why I said, if you go online, just go online, Google them. Skip the first 3 pages because it's going to be all their websites, but go on YouTube and Google God the Mother people, God the Mother Church. Go on TikTok, go on Instagram, hashtag God the Mother, stuff like that. And just look at what real people are saying. Go on YouTube and watch videos that are not from the church, because the church is always going to show you only their point of view. And when you see stuff from their critics, like they like to say, their critics, believe what they're saying, honestly, because these people are not lying. Like, I've watched many of those videos now after leaving, and I'm like, holy shit, like, they weren't lying. But while we were in the church, we were like afraid to go look at that stuff because they make you feel like if you go on the internet, you're gonna die. You're killing yourself spiritually. You know, Satan's gonna enter you, and you're not gonna be able to receive the truth. It's like they kind of scare you into not looking up and researching the church but it's like, in hindsight, if you do have the truth, if you are the truth, you should be able to withstand anything. What are you afraid of? Let someone make their own decision. Like, if I can go and read something online, and whatever, you have a question about something, but then you can come back and question it, and then it should be fine because you're the truth. But they know that it's gonna kind of make you think about something.
And I got in trouble for it.
Exactly.
The punishment or the consequence was, it changed the agenda for the day, right? Because I happened to mention how, hey, so I did go online, and as soon as I said that, like, pastor came down the aisle,
cut you off.
Cut me off, didn't even let me finish. And I get it, I wasn't supposed to, but you know, I was new and I was also curious and I did it. But either way, what I was gonna say was basically, oh, we need to be careful with our material because this person said that his roommate is a church member and they have a bookshelf in the living room, and that's how he got access to, you know, to the books, and that's how he learned about us or whatever. And literally my message was going to be that, like, you know, these are our treasures, like, just make sure you protect it. And, you know, he didn't even let me say that. But
as soon as you mention the word online, they're like, oh, she's about to say something crazy that's going to affect everybody else's beliefs.
He literally came down, cut me off. I didn't even get to finish saying what I had to say, which is for the better at the end of the day. And then we had the second service, which now was not what he was originally going to talk about. Now he was teaching us about what it means if you stray away, right? If you stray away from the church. Yeah. And then after the second service, which we have another big break, another gap before third service and before dinner. Now we had to watch a video.
It was like an animal documentary. Yeah. I had missed out on that because I was with a new person.
Yeah. It was
but they were telling me like, oh, like your cousin said something at the microphone, so they made us like watch a video.
So obviously it was embarrassing to me.
Even embarrassing to me because I'm associated to you. But, so I felt
it was embarrassing, but also, you know, I was a baby in the truth. I was still only there like a few months anyway. We were only there for a few months.
That's why they were like so concerned.
So for me, if I'm in the church for 6 months, I'm still inexperienced and young.
Yeah.
You know, me and you are different.
And in their eyes too.
And like we are different where you were definitely available to be there more often than I was. I still had a kid. My kid was in sports. This is before I had to like officially take him out or whatever. So I wasn't there as often, but I was there a lot. So for me, I feel like my timing, 6 months in, for me, I'm still a baby in the church. You know what I mean? I'm still learning. So, you know, after that, it was embarrassing, obviously. I never got up again. But I did feel that from that moment on is when they started judging me. And I did feel it. Like, you know, it had nothing to do with what I read online, to be honest. Like, it literally had everything to do with how Pastor behaved and how they had to watch me extra after, you know, like
be careful. Like,
yeah.
If they do feel like you're somebody who questions stuff, or they feel like you went online, they want to make sure you don't affect someone else.
Exactly. They started separating us at that point.
Yeah, they would have let's say if I'm like being super dedicated, and if you have like questions about something, they wouldn't want you to be around someone that doesn't have questions, because then they don't want you to affect them. But at the end of the day, now in hindsight, you realize that's all part of their method, their manipulation method. Like in the members' eyes, again, there's like levels, right? The members that really feel like they're doing this for like spiritual reasons and like good reasons. And then there's the leaders that just know that this whole thing is a tactic and this is manipulation in order to get people to stay, and you know,
they need to keep you there.
Yeah, like there's different levels.
They need you here because they count on you.
Shit. Yeah, the members do the weird shit because that's what they were taught, and they feel like this is the right thing. So they feel like, oh, in their eyes, they're like, oh, we're protecting her soul, protecting her spirit. But in the top people's eyes, it's like, no, this is what you have to do so that person doesn't leave the church. Yeah. So if that person's having questions, they're going to affect this person. And then instead of losing just one person, you're going to lose two. So separate them.
So to be honest, at that point, when I noticed the shift, I'm a person that I'm just like, I'm the kind of person that I'm like, I'm an adult. You talk to me with respect. You treat me with respect. Like, don't dismiss me like that. Don't treat me like that. And they were not protecting me, but don't do what you did, trying to manipulate me. And I was starting to notice that because they were trying to force me to learn all these other things. Because it wasn't just the video. And it
like
wasn't,
they were trying to
it wasn't just the
You
video.
the antidote to the
it wasn't just the video, and it wasn't just the extra service that he had to do. Because then they also put me in a room again for another fucking Bible study too, like a specific, like, remember what happens when, you know, like when you disobey God or whatever.
Yeah.
So after that, I started struggling with the fact of like, well, I really don't want to be here anymore, right? Like, I don't like the way that everything changed, and it's awkward now. And I felt, and I struggled with the fact of like, okay, well, what was my true purpose then, right? Because I was fine before believing in God. I feel like I'm okay knowing who the real God is, right? Because I didn't leave because I didn't believe in the God. I left because of how I felt. Mm-hmm. So I was struggling with you. Like, okay, what was my true purpose? Maybe my purpose was to bring you here because you were an advanced gospel worker and you were doing so well and you seemed to be happy. And I was like, okay, maybe that was my job and that's it. Like,
yeah, I remember you telling me that. And
I was like, I'll be
crying.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like,
because I was struggling with it.
Yeah, I was like, that's not true.
This was after the first time I did actually leave, and then they fucking came to get me. And I didn't remember this at all until Tiffany reminded me, like, oh, you remember when they went to your house to go get you? And I was like, oh my God, guess what? They brought me back to the church, and then I was in pastor's office. Oh, remember, there was like 10 or 15 other members in there.
You told me after.
Yeah. There was so many members there, and he was just like, you know, what's going to happen to your child's salvation? Your child's salvation is dependent of you. Yeah. Like if you leave, then, you know, how is your kid? Yeah. Basically. And I was just like, you know, like, oh, I was only concerned about Tiffany. I forgot about Lewis, like his salvation. But I didn't think it would be that big of a deal because, again, my brother was there. So I felt like, oh, well, my brother could bring him for Passover. Yeah. Right. But
so by the time, we went through, like, we did a lot of our shit together. Like, every Bible study was together. Every time we went to the church, period, was us together. And then
preaching.
In the beginning, they had a kids room where you wouldn't stay with your kid all day. Like, even while on the Sabbath, your kid went to the kids room.
And you stayed with a little group. Everybody was broken into groups.
Yeah, even the kids. And you wouldn't see your kid all day. If you were with your kid, it was like, oh, that's your idol. Mm-hmm. You know, let them take care of him because you need to focus on you.
Which was hard for me because I was like, I need to make sure that he's okay.
He's okay, like, you can't even, like, they don't even want you checking on him. Like, they'll let you, when you're new, they'll let you, like, check on him and stuff. But after that, it's like, listen, we got this. Like, if you don't trust us, you know, you have no faith.
Right.
But anyways, at some point, because people around 2012, people started speaking out about the church. That was like the first wave of people that started speaking out about the church. So they changed a lot of stuff about themselves around the end of 2012, leading into 2013.
When the world didn't end.
Yeah, the world didn't end. We were new at the time,
like
still.
They predicted.
So a lot of things changed. So we would come all the time. We would be leaving super late after our Bible studies. And, you know, in the beginning, you're just doing mostly Bible studies. They're not expecting you to preach or anything like that. But we liked to be in the church. Like, the environment was friendly. They were love bombing the shit out of us at the time and all this stuff. And we would just be there, happy to be there. And the kids' room had no limit. But after 2012, when people started speaking out and they told them that people are leaving this place at midnight with their kids and their kids are going to school the next day, sleep deprived, like all this stuff. And then the church, instead of like admitting that they did that, they would just like, no, we never did that. And they finally put a time frame on the kids' room. They closed at 9. But mind you, 9 p.m. compared to being there till midnight was super early for me. I'm a childless young person, so I kind of at that time
for me
didn't have a
Louis
car.
Aged out of the kids' room too, but he was still
he was tough
young.
To stay with kids. Yeah, he was tough to stay with the kids' room if you brought him. So at the time we would come together all the time, like drove together. So at that time, they had the kids' room limit now, and I was like, I'm not gonna leave at 9 p.m. because I'm so used to staying there having a good time till like midnight. I was like, I'm not gonna leave at 9 p.m. because I don't got no kids. So I was kind of like, I think now we're gonna have to come separately. Like I was like, I could bring you, but you're gonna have to find your way back home because I'm not leaving. Like that's how I felt. So at that time was when we kind of started to separate a little bit within the church, and then like you said, they ended up putting you in a different group. We would do everything together, Bible studies, everything. But at some point, they separated us and put us into different groups.
Mind so it was just a lot of little things happening
you're busy
for me
all the time.
too.
So we started to, just kind of grow differently. And I was more growing ingrained in the church
Mm-hmm.
and you were kind of like, you know, having your own personal struggles,
Yeah.
but because you always concerned for my salvation,
Yeah.
you didn't want to affect me, I guess.
So I thought it was easier because when we got separated.
Yeah. And then you ended up going to
yeah.
a different location. So then we weren't in
Yeah.
the same location. So by the time you left the church, I had found out and I was like, what? Like I was shocked. But by that time we were so separated, like they separated us inside of the church, that it didn't affect me to the point where I would want to leave with you.
No.
I was more like sad.
I need to bring her back.
Like I need to bring her back. And like, why would you leave? And like, you know, stuff like that. But we were so disconnected by then too that I didn't even feel like I really could reach out to you like that because I didn't know what was going on with you spiritually. Yeah. So I was kind of like, there's only so much I can do. You know, like I was sad as hell because you're really sad. When somebody leaves the church, you think they're going to die spiritually. You think they're going to hell by that point. So, you know, you're sad because you're thinking the only reason I'm doing all of this is because I'm trying to work for heaven, you know? So yeah, I don't know. We just kind of got disconnected from them. But now I'm alone in the church. Like your brother still went. But then I ended up going to the church in New York, which is the headquarters at this point, and I started working for them behind the scenes. And when I say work, it was volunteer work. I was not getting paid, okay? But I was always in their graphics and multimedia department. So I just got like this big blessing and moved up to New York. So I was even more disconnected from my family. But even before, while I was in the church in New Jersey, why I was disconnected from the family, and like I said, we were together, so it was okay that we missed all the Saturday stuff. But even during the week, we felt like our time was demanded of us. If you were not there for a day of the week to go preaching, it's like, what are you doing? Like, you have to be here preaching. Like, otherwise, you're faithless. So Monday through fucking Friday, we're preaching, and Sundays we're preaching, and then Mondays you're cleaning, Fridays you're cleaning. Every day was given to them. So even if your family did have an event on Sunday, but God forbid you missed a Sunday of preaching to go be with your family, you would come back and they'll look at you like, you're not as faithful as we thought you were. So we're gonna start kind of isolating you a little bit. You know, that's how you would feel. So you didn't want to have that feeling. You want to be like, no, I want to do everything right. Yeah. So you do everything right. So I started to not be around my family because I'm like, I'm giving all my time to this church.
Yeah, because
when it's really, I'm giving all my time to God. That's how I felt. That was my justification of it. So yes, you're missing Saturday events, but you're also missing every fucking day of the week event. And it dismantled a lot of my family relationships. The only reason I kept a semi-relationship with like my mom and like two of my nieces is because I lived with my mom. So I saw my mom every once in a while. So I would see my mom when I came home 2 a.m., 12 a.m. And then like that's it. My little nieces when they were there.
No matter how old you get, your mom, if you live at home with your mom, they're still gonna wait for you to walk through that door before they go to sleep.
I would always pop in, watch her like I'm home, even if like, she was like sleeping. But anyways, you know, so I would see my mom a little bit, but I wasn't spending quality time with my family anymore. Yeah. And then you're not there for the holidays, so even the days you did have off, you're in the church. So it was a lot. It was a lot of strain on the family. So that was another thing that they do. Even if you join today, nowadays, they do have that expectation. Like, you know, I think they've really loosened their reins. That's why the Church of God we speak about now is probably very different from the Church of God someone will join today. But at the base, their teachings will still be kind of the same. So that's why we want to just bring awareness. But, you know, it did take away time from our family. And then, you know, so that's one thing we want to bring awareness to. I don't know if there's anything else we want to say.
Well, I mean, just if you do get approached by anybody, don't be afraid to ask them. Like if you've already heard about them, ask them whatever question you need to before you give them your contact information, before you even agree to go to see them. Like if anything sounds wrong, just kind of talk about it right then and there. Don't give them your phone number because that's the best way for them to continue to reach out to you. They're gonna continue to pressure you until you actually come, and then when you get there,
love bomb you, so.
When you get there, exactly, they're gonna love bomb you. They're gonna manipulate
these people have to
you.
Be nice.
Yeah, they are nice. They're nice people.
Yeah. Oh, they always, when the people approach you, they're always well dressed. They're very good looking people. So you know, you kind of like, oh, they can't be bad, and the people are not bad. I'm not saying the people approaching you are these evil people. They're not.
They're normal people.
They believe in this
like
religion. It's just like a Jehovah's Witness goes up to you and tries to preach to you. They really believe in what they believe, but their beliefs are wrong.
They aren't taught.
Yeah, we're not.
The
You
truth,
have very limited information. They don't encourage research. And it's like, if you're the truth, you should be open to any kind of research.
Yep.
Let people go on their own. Why don't you want people going on the internet when they join? Is because you know that once they see all of the things that you've done, all the things that you actually believe, they know that you're not really going to come. So, why do you do deceptive recruitment if you're not trying to be deceptive? You know what I mean? Why do you withhold information from members, even longtime members? There's a lot of things that the members don't know because they're not allowed to research. So even the people that come and they teach you the Bible, they don't know much. And actually, even about the Bible, they don't preach to people that have very, very good knowledge of the Bible. They think that they do. They think they can withstand any kind of person that knows the Bible really well, but they don't. Most of the people that teach you the Bible in that place, unless they're a pastor or a high position in the church, they barely know the Bible. They just know these memorized verses, memorized explanation, memorized connections. But they don't know every single thing about the Bible. So if you are well-versed in the Bible, just ask them whatever questions you can biblically, because you'll see how they kind of stutter or they'll say, oh, you're going to study about that later. Or, oh, you don't need to know that for your salvation.
If something doesn't make sense, don't let them.
Don't just let it go.
Yeah, like if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Ask as many questions as you need for it to make sense, if it's going to make sense.
And just to say this, you can believe whatever you want at the end of the day. Even I wish some members who are current members could hear this. The message I would want to give is, you know what? If you really believe in that, if you really believe this is the truth, that you want to stay there for the rest of your life, you know what? Do it. Believe in it. But don't let it affect you in the way that we have let it affect us, right? Don't let them take you away from your family for any excuse or reason. Yeah, you don't want to celebrate the holidays? Whatever. That's fine. Like the holidays, whatever. If you feel like you don't believe in that, that's fine. Yeah. But that you can't visit your family on a Sunday, a day of the week, or take time to go visit your family. They make you feel guilty for visiting your parents. Back in the day, now they try to act like, go visit your family. Right. Like I said, they changed a lot of things. But when I tell you the reason why they've changed things now is because people like us have been speaking out. Yep. Right? We're not the only ones to do this. Many people have spoken out. And that's what requires the church to change their ways now, which is good. At the end of the day, at least they're changing stuff for the next generation. But guess what? You already fucked up our life and our experience, and you gave us religious trauma. So, for us, it sucks. For the next generation, okay, at least some things are a little lenient. But there's still so many things they do that are not. If you're there
because you like to be in the community, that's cool. If you like that the fact that you're living a better lifestyle, right? You're not doing drugs, you're not doing alcohol, you're not partying, you're feeling connected to God, cool.
But don't let it affect your life, your finances.
Do not miss
out. Don't give them all your money. Yeah.
Don't wait. Like, I'll tell you right now, if your mom misses you and wants to see you, do not give up that chance to go visit her because you had something to do with the church.
Yeah, don't give them all your time.
Don't wait until it's too late. Yeah.
Because what I've seen, even with people who gave 10 years of their life, 20 years of their life for this place, the minute that you're no longer producing something for them, the minute that you're no longer useful to them, and whether that's whatever talent you brought to them, which is like, whatever talent, whatever money you brought to them, you recruiting people, if you're no longer, beneficial to them in that way, they just put you to the side. And then you realize, holy shit, I missed out on time with my family, extracurricular with my kids. That's another thing. If you have kids, they don't really encourage you to have, like, you have to give up sports and stuff. If your kids did extracurricular, don't take that from them for this church. If you want to be a member, be a member. Keep the fucking Sabbath day. Keep the third day, whatever. But if your kids like sports, keep them in those sports. If you want to visit your family, visit your family. You want to go on vacation, take the vacation. That's another thing they didn't encourage was, oh, why are you taking vacation? Like, you're enjoying things that are worldly. Just do whatever you want. Treat it as a natural church. That's the thing, is that's why people say that they're cult-like, is because they demand your time. They demand your money. They demand control over your life. Don't let them control your life. If you want to be a member there, be a member there, whatever. But what we're going to do at the end of this video, or like in the caption area, we're going to put a few resources, a few websites that you can go to just to have a second opinion. Always get a second opinion. Ask your fucking ChatGPT. Type these things into your ChatGPT and be like, hey, does this sound normal about this place? Blah, 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 whatever it is. But, we'll link actual resources at the bottom of the video. I'm going to share a link to another video that I had done where I talk a little bit about my escape story, how I escaped the church at the time. I'll link that page, and that page actually has a lot of other videos that have testimonials of members who have left. And, listen to them and believe them. Because that's the thing. When you hear this from the inside of the church, they're going to tell you that we're lying, that the people in these videos are lying. But it's like, there's only so much that you could say these people are lying. If 25, 100 people are all saying the same exact thing, you know, about their experience with this church, you can't keep calling them liars. It's not true. You know, they're the ones who are withholding information, and, you know, they're trying to hide behind all these good deeds that they do. And again, those good deeds are just for show. They're just doing it for recognition. They're doing it for awards. They're not doing it because they actually love and care, you know? So there's so much we can say about this place, but literally for a limit of time, we have to cut it short. But, you know, we just wanted to share a little bit about who they are, how we came across them.
Yeah.
We didn't even fully talk about how it affected us, really, but, you know, it is what it is.
We touched a little bit.
We touched a little bit about it. So,
we didn't get deep into it.
So, you know, thanks for watching. If you did stick through this long ass video, but again, we just had to put it out there because it will be referenced here and there in the podcast. We'll talk about it a lot, and like, again, the resources are going to be at the bottom, so you can just see more about the Church of God. If you hear from them, join them at your own discretion. Okay, it is in your hands.
Trust your gut. At the end of the day,
trust your gut. And if you guys want to reach out to us, I think we can also put our personal social media on there. Like, I'll put my personal social media like in the comments, maybe, or in the caption. Because if anybody ever has questions about the church, or if you have an experience with them, like, I know so much about them, the ins, the outs, everything. Reach out to me, ask me questions, talk about it. You know, I could even connect you with other people that have better answers to some of the biblical side. Whereas I can talk a lot about the lifestyle parts and some of the biblical, like cutting out the biblical fallacies in their teachings. But I also know a lot of people that are really good at being able to explain to you why their biblical teachings are not true, not the real truth that they say that it is. We'll put all that information so you guys can reach out and just inform yourselves. That's all you gotta do, is inform yourselves. We're not telling you what to do. All we said, right, for legal purposes, is it is a church that has cult-like tendencies. You choose what you want to do with that information. So we'll leave you guys with that, and then that's it. So bye, Primas.